The first reading this morning is from Deuteronomy, the 5th chapter. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, or your son or your daughter, or your male or female slave, or your ox or your donkey, or any of your livestock, or the resident alien in your towns, so that your male and female slave may rest as well as you. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel according to Matthew, the 11th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O
Christ. You may be seated. My personal email address and all my social media accounts use the name Tired Kate. Created while I was in seminary when I was struggling to choose a username when I signed up for Gmail, which now you can figure out my personal email address. My brother suggested my email address reflect a perpetual state of exhaustion he had known to be true of me. Tired Kate. It is a statement about my personality that began when I was in high school, when I was overcommitted with about 1,000 pokers in the fire. And while I might have regularly gotten more sleep once I got to college and I could register for classes that started after 10 a.m., my constant busyness and inability to go to bed before midnight still made the title true. Clearly, that name was still true when I was in seminary, and while I would like to think that being in school is a particular way of being that is only temporary, the Tired Kate trend has continued all these years later. Often choosing to go to bed later than I should and rising early because of a dog or some other need in the morning. There are days, sometimes weeks, where I subsist mostly on caffeine. If you came in early this morning, you saw me holding a 4-shot latte from House of Vibes. I drink coffee regularly in the morning and then sometimes switch to Red Bull or an energy drink in the afternoon to get through that. Work hard, play hard was the motto instilled in me from an early age, but working hard and playing hard together create Tired Kate. And this morning, as I listen to our reading from Deuteronomy, I'm reminded that for as long as I am Tired Kate, as long as I keep this schedule, I am breaking one of the 10 commandments. A commandment that is often overlooked, one that we easily brush aside as not needing to be fulfilled, or believing that it was something that was for the Jewish people long ago, And yet it is an important reminder of our humanity and something to not be taken lightly. This command is more than a side note stuffed in between the command that dictates how we relate to God and the others that dictate how we relate to each other. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, Deuteronomy says, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, or your male or female slave, or your ox or your donkey, because I know some of you have those, or any of your livestock, or the resident aliens in your towns, so that your male and female slave may rest as well as you. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. The last verse reminds us that the commandments were given to the people after they had exited slavery in Egypt as a means by which God taught them how to be a people. Where they were once valued by only what they produced, they were now free to live in a new way. Locked into the system of slavery, they worked all week long, but God says, don't do that. Work for 6 days and then take at least 1 day off. A day to remember that you are not what you produce. A day to rest in order to have energy to produce the next 6 days. A day to remember that you don't have to do it all, that you are human beings that have hearts, minds, and souls that are in need of tending, not machines capable of running all the time. Although if we're honest, my computer often needs to be rebooted, so maybe it needs a rest too. Not only that, God says, but give everyone in your house a day off. You, your son, your daughter, your male or female slave, everyone, so that they may rest as well as you. So that you may see and remember that you are human beings alongside each other, all of you, children of God. As one commentator states, the other commandments take the people out of slavery. The Sabbath command takes the slavery out of the people. And while we would be tempted to cry out, as some did to Jesus all those years ago, but we have never been slaves to anyone, especially those of you who are retired and get to make your own schedule. I think if we were to cry that, we'd be wrong. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself enslaved to this little device that sits in my pocket. On it, I have access to the world, which in one sense is great. But it all,
I'm still not sure about that.
Siri's not sure about that, though. But it also means that I have the ability to quickly flip through my church email on a moment's notice. To have people texting or messaging me on Facebook or Twitter about something that needs to happen with this community. As I scroll through my Facebook feed and see posts from colleagues about things happening in the church, and even if it is my day off or I've already gone home for the day, I am tempted to respond, and I know that I am not alone. With these devices, we are always on, always available, always tempted to believe that we're valued solely because of the work that we do. And I think that God would agree with you that the work you do is important, regardless of whether it's in a hospital, the schools here, or volunteering in a community to ensure that all are fed, clothed, and cared for. And yet those things, the things that we do, are not what give us our worth. Instead, it is God who gives us our worth, simply because of who we are, because we are human beings, children of God, loved and cared for and by the one who created all of this. So take a break. Not just a vacation once or twice a year, but weekly. Take time off. Create space in your life in which you stop working, stop doing, and start being. Space to recognize that you are not God, that none of us are. And don't relax after everything is in order, when the dishwasher is loaded at the end of the day, all the bills are paid, and the counters are cleared, when the work is done. Instead, rest for the work that you're about to do, knowing that that rest will make you productive. We don't take a Sabbath from the work we have done. Instead, we take a Sabbath for the work we are about to do, because we always start from the place of recognizing who we are and whose we are, that we always belong to God, the God who created all of this, and that God will continue to care for us in that creation. And while our work is important, so is our rest. In fact, our very lives may depend upon it, which is why God commands it.